Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 6 of our coverage of COP28. It is already almost the end of the week, the first week of COP28. We've got so many interesting days in the past. We've had lots of interesting discussions on topics as variable as agriculture, nuclear fusion. We also have some segments on climate justice, and we'll even delve into that a little bit more today. But first, let's take a look at the headlines. And as always, if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. We're welcome. We will be very happy to address them in our segment today. But as I said, first, let's take a look at the headlines. I think the U.S. Climate czar, John Kerry, who has also been featured before in a few of our photos when discussions with our members, recently announced today that the U.S. will be engaging in a new pursuit of research on nuclear fusion development. It's practically mirroring the essentially what the UK is investing right now into nuclear fusion, as well as France and 35 other nations as they partner on a new bureau that has been put together in France to discover how to develop nuclear fusion in the best way possible. Also in COP28 news, there is a lot of consternation right now about the concept that COP28 has still not yet come to a resolution on phasing out of fossil fuels. Lots of folks have come out swinging against COP28 essentially as COP26 in Glasgow had essentially everyone committed to reducing fossil fuels. So it took 26 years for us to admit that we need to reduce fossil fuels. 28 years, going on 29 years now for COP28, and we still cannot reach a resolution confirming that we will phase out completely the use of fossil fuels, which seems a rather interesting point, given the fact that this is a climate change conference. And for the first time in, I think, 28 years, Europe has had a record amount of snow fall in on that continent. Once again, showing how climate change can be extraordinarily variable. During winter times can get extraordinarily harsh. Summer times can get extraordinarily harsh. As we have seen over time, the future, or at least the globe warming, I think we had an average of 2 degrees Celsius warm, I think, at some point this year, which was a massive alarm bell. Anyway, before we move on any further, if anyone would like to comment on any of those stories or how they're seeing these on the ground play out, feel free to make a mention of that now. John, you have any thoughts to add on that, on either of those points?
Well, I have been hearing a lot. I don't know if you can hear me. I've been hearing a lot about fossil fuels today and attending a number of sessions on environmental justice. Most of the sessions are talking about the fact that all this technology that we're trying to suck out of the atmosphere, suck the carbon out of the atmosphere, it's just allowing fossil fuels to continue. There's a real outcry for there to be a phasing out of fossil fuels, not just to protect our atmosphere, but the indigenous communities and the local communities. John?
The concept of direct air capture and actual ocean capture as well, which is in some ways seen as being thermodynamically more effective, more efficient. We have to do that. We must begin those programs, but that is a completely separate issue from the phasing out of fossil fuels. The efficiency of the direct air capture and the ocean capture, we need to maximize that. However, it's uncertain that even maximizing that process, whether or not it would make fossil fuels competitive. I mean, that will actually, the determining factor in that will be how much energy it takes to take out how much carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. If it's a highly efficient process, and fossil fuel extraction remains or comes down in cost, because right now it's just barely cost competitive with renewable energy. Renewable energy is going to get cheaper. it's going to be fossil fuels are
Solar
going to
and
be
wind going down, 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 and the cost of all these technologies are staying level that take carbon out of the air.
Well, the carbon removal will become more efficient too. If it doesn't, then we're in big trouble. So we have to depend upon that. But fossil fuels will not get cheaper to extract from the ground. The only thing that could get cheaper for fossil fuels is the profit margin. They may be willing to accept a smaller profit margin from that operation. But as we've seen with the fluctuations in the price per barrel of oil, there are thresholds around $40 a barrel or somewhere around there, where below that level, it's no longer cost effective for them to extract the oil and sell it. So depending, the direct air capture will erode some of that $40 a barrel price structure to take perhaps $10 a barrel or $20 a barrel off of that price. So the economics will determine that. We have to make the direct air capture as efficient as possible for simple survival. Whether or not fossil fuels are able to maintain a competitive posture within whatever costs we face for direct air capture is their problem. You know, we're not going to subsidize, or we need to remove all the subsidies from fossil fuels. And if they can produce and offset 100% of their emissions and still stay in business, great. We would have no concerns about that. But we should not transfer that cost to the consumers or the government. That extraction of CO2 from the atmosphere, from the fossil fuel, needs to be borne by the fossil fuel extractors, basically at the wellhead. They need to assume that cost.
And this isn't to mention in the, we brought up a couple of times now the ability or the concept of carbon capture. This isn't to mention that in terms of the amount of cost per joule or the cost per energy unit, that it might be better to invest all of our money into research to develop carbon capture, and rather than ramp up early technologies too fast. This is really about the concept of how much money are we investing today into what in order to maximize the amount of carbon reduced tomorrow. And in that case, it just simply may be more important for us to invest in the research, a sheer amount of money thrown into research, and then wait 5, 6, 7 years down the line, and then ramp up the technology or ramp up the development of the technology into carbon capture centers everywhere.
As well as today, there was a lot of emphasis on addressing infrastructure like cement and steel. I'm wondering, John, do you have some insights into some of the technologies which are trying to decarbonize those industries which are so essential to building?
Yeah, the steel industry is interesting. It's very energy intensive process. Not only is it energy intensive, but it's more dependent upon combustion-based heat than other industries. The sector of the steel industry that can utilize renewable energies, that deliver relatively low temperature at the furnace, is the recycling. And most of the remaining steel industry in the United States is based upon that recycling. But the standard steel production process is very high heat, and that requires often a different form of energy than our typical solar and wind energy. That is where the nuclear reactors come into play. They can generate much higher temperatures, and it's seen as potential support for the steel industry. So that's one unique aspect or attribute where the type of energy matters. And for those of us consuming electricity, there's any number of processes that can generate electricity very effectively. But when it comes to high temperature industrial processes, that's a slightly different issue.
Very true. Now, the next subject that we have on our program right now is an interview, and I was curious if, John, you wanted to introduce your speaker here for the video.
Well, sure, I'll do that. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with a young man, Kevin Etienne, who is living in Canada, originally from Haiti. And he came to me when we had an extra pass. We thought we were going to try to find another student. And he contacted me, but he contacted me after the deadline for allocating the blue zone passes to COP28. So instead, we decided to get together over in the green zone and have a little conversation. And we recorded an interview with him. And I'm looking forward to talking with more with Etienne, with Kevin in the future. And maybe he can participate with us next year in the blue zone. But go ahead and play that interview, Rob.
Sounds good.
I'm here with Kevin Etienne. Kevin is a 2023 graduate of ETS in Montreal, and he studied electrical engineering. He's here at COP28 now after last week attending and participating in the Student Energy Summit in Abu Dhabi. Kevin, tell us a little bit about your involvement and what you and the other students were doing at this Energy Summit. And then what are you drawing from that experience and the experience here at COP28 in Dubai? And how do you believe that that's going to influence and help your future in your contributions to addressing the climate crisis? And also talk a little bit about your background and your perceptions of attitudes of young people in your home country of Haiti, in Canada, and the United States.
So I would start by saying that I was very fortunate to attend the Student Energy Summit in Abu Dhabi through my involvement with Engineers Without Borders Canada. I've been a member now for 8 years, and I'm a community distributed team, so basically I'm in charge of the whole province of Quebec chapters. Now, when it comes to what we did in depth, we're very lucky to have a lot of breakout sessions with policymakers, government officials, discussing what needs to be done to really foster a just transition. This was the whole, let's say, key aspect of this summit. And I would say that to me, going back home, what I take away is that at the end of the day, as much as technology is important, policies are what make the difference. Advocacy is really needed, because you could have the best technology there is, if the laws are not facilitating its usage, it's pretty much doomed to fail. So now, from a personal perspective, I would say that as an electrical engineer, I really feel like I have a duty to be at the forefront of this just transition / electrical renewal, if I could say, in the sense that I could be either acting as a project manager, I could be in the lab researching those two technologies, but my academic background gives me the proper tool to really contribute to that just transition. And it's something that I find very empowering, especially being in a context like CES 2023 and COP28. Lastly, when it comes to my perspective regarding the youth attitude to climate change in different countries, I would say that in Canada, my perspective is that we're very, very much in tune with the program. If I could say, excuse my French, we're getting in line, really. We take it at heart, and we're keen about making a change. Now, when it comes to countries like Haiti, sadly, there's a lot of issues within the borders, internal issues, corruptions, natural disaster. So it makes it that as much as my fellow brothers and sisters back home want to contribute and want to be part of the solution, when from day to day you wonder what you're going to eat and how you're going to survive, it's very hard to focus on the broader picture. Last but not least, when it comes to Americans, I would say that our perspective in Canada is that maybe this is not taking as seriously as we could have thought. Let's say, I think today again, the government spending in war and ammunition is the highest of all the different funds that are held. So it shows that really a lot of talk yet, not necessarily a lot of walk. And it's scary because in a huge country like the United States, we can really see from state to state the impact and the natural disasters coming from climate change.
Kevin, a little bit about the Student Energy Summit and what you draw from that relative to the balance of technological contributions that a professional like you can make versus the leadership contributions you can make to the larger society. How do you think these sort of experiences help you balance that contribution? Because, you know, if you limit yourself to just the technology, often the leadership is deferred to others who may not have the same analytical perspective on real solutions.
I would say that it's a known thing and stereotypes that engineers are not the greatest at communicating and sharing their thoughts. So to me, being at the Student Energy Summit was also a way of practicing those skills. Yes, I know a fair share when it comes to the technology, or the technical. However, when put in the same space as PhD students, master students, lawmakers, I have to find a way to present the technology in a form that is palpable and understanding for them to understand how this can be implemented and how we can move forward for a just transition.
Also, when you talk about young people in Haiti not being in a position to contribute as much due to the hardships of day-to-day living, do you believe that as an element of perhaps like a loss and damage fund, if students were given the basic living standards and intense education, that they would be willing to dedicate their careers and their lives to the climate solution and other critical problems, as opposed to pursuing the quote American dream of a job on Wall Street with lots of money and quick riches? Do you think that young people in developing nations might be more amenable to that sort of life arc or trajectory than, say, young people in a Western nation?
It's a very interesting question. From the top of my head, I would say that maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that was something, maybe 10 years ago, that was something that was still very, very plausible. American dream, me wanting to leave my home country to go and thrive in the United States. But I would say that as of today, seeing the climate in those Western countries, and when I say climate, not only physical weather, but really politic tensions, economy, a lot of people, in my perspective, would rather stay home where they know what's at stake and how they can really contribute, rather than leave for the unknown and maybe be put in a situation that is, I wouldn't say worse than back home, but maybe not as appealing as they thought it would be.
Kevin, when it comes to you as an electrical engineer and being familiar with technology, when you look across the breadth of technological innovations that are coming on board and even being contemplated, what do you see as some of the hopeful technologies for the future that can address this climate change, even if they're not mature enough to be implemented yet?
I feel like the hype, excuse my French, as of today is really about carbon capture system. We're at a stage now where we made so much emission that even if we were to stop, there would still be too much in the atmosphere. So we need to take some out. So in that sense, I would say that this is something that is very, very, very avant-gardist and something that a lot of people are excited about. Me personally, I'm a die-hard solar panel fan. I feel like, especially let's say here in Dubai, the Mohammed bin Rashid solar park is really a state of art, and it combines, I think, 3 different types of solar panel technology. And I truly, truly believe that when it comes to the investment that could be made in those technology, solar panels are things that could be shipped everywhere across the world and provide energy for everybody, really. So yes, carbon capture system is very enticing and interesting, but before even tackling, let's say, the GIGs, I would really put emphasis on making sure that everybody has a right access to electricity and just energy as a whole.
So, solar energy is a good example. The original technology, when it first started ramping up, it took 10 years of production to pay back the energy that went into the creation of the hardware. Now, those estimates were even conservative. It could be more.
Yes.
But basic research and applied research is driving down that energy payback time to 1 or 2 years potentially, depending upon manufacturing and technological methods employed. What do you feel about that, the need to drive forward the technology at a fundamental level so that we can have faster payback times? Do you think students in your discipline are aware of that need and are prepared to tackle that challenge?
100%. And I would say that I was very lucky in the sense that I did a lot of research papers on solar panels. In my perspective, there's a more traditional way of looking at the solar panel where you put it on the roof or you put it on the ceiling and that's that. But there's so many different ways of using solar panels. In the windows, bifacial, which means that it's double-sided. And with something like the albedo effect, let's say a country like Canada, where the sun rays can reflect off the snow and come at the back of the panel, you're gonna maximize even more your energy output. So all things being considered, I feel like there's a lot of ways we can keep innovating in that field, and I'm very, very passionate about it.
And if you had a message to convey to university students in the United States from the perspective of a Canadian and say a Haitian, what would you want to say to them relative to a shared journey into the future?
I would say I'm very close to your country in the sense that I have a lot of family in the United States. However, it's not too late. We can definitely go down this road together. And I feel like it's not a lack of resources, it's not a lack of academia, it's really a lack of involvement. So I would say that, again, events like COP28 show us that when everybody comes together, we can really tackle huge problems. And I would definitely invite students in the United States to beg and ask the question as to what they're currently doing and what they could be doing to be part of the solution rather than the problem.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot and looking forward to more conversations with you.
Thank you for having me.
You know, there's something to be said for his last message there, which is critically thinking about how to be part of the solutions and not to consistently be a part of the problem. And this, you know, as we've had many discussions before about how many of the problems with regard to carbon are usually for those folks at the very top of the food chain. Those folks who take the private jets, those folks who consistently tell the rest of the population they need to be conserving their carbon when they're still the ones emitting the most. But at the same time, I don't think that alleviates the need for us to critically think about what we still can be doing in our lives. The whole carbon footprint thing, sure, we may not be emitting the most as a percentage of the population, but still we could be innovating in solutions, not just reducing our carbon footprint, but contributing to the overall lessening of the carbon footprint on the planet if we put our, you know, critical thinking caps on and try to engage in that sort of discussion in a critical way.
Well, Kevin was a perfect example of the type of student
I agree with you, Rob. Sorry. I just wanted to bring in the issue.
I heard John first, and then we'll jump over to you, Dana.
Yeah, I was going to just comment on Kevin being one of many talented young professionals and students that participated in this Student Energy Summit. He told me that there were approximately 650 people like him at this summit. So if they're all as equally talented and hardworking and dedicated as Kevin, then I think that's very encouraging.
Wonderful. And Dana?
Yeah, I just wanted to remark this ties very closely into this issue, which has been addressed today critically, of environmental justice, not just in the global South, but in the United States as well. Those receiving, those are most vulnerable to climate change are those who are in the global south, or in indigenous communities, or in redline communities in the United States, Black, brown people, and they are the ones with the fewest resources, and the resources aren't getting to them. And we remarked today that the language in the COP just it really needs to improve the language that's built into those commitments, which address environmental justice, and the gap, what they call the gap, the gender action plan, because there is very little discussion of that. Of course, women are disproportionately impacted by climate change as well, not just in the global south, also in the United States. I think it's very, it's remarkable as well that the initiatives and the work that the IRA actually includes, and the Environmental Protection Agency under President Biden, with the Justice 40 initiative and other environmental justice initiatives that he's just getting launched, as well, trying to launch the U.S. Climate Corps, modeling it after the Peace Corps, that we can get people in the frontline communities involved, educated, and working towards a common goal. I think this is another reason. I mean, the Biden administration has not been perfect, but they are trying to address this from every side. It is so essential that we get out the vote in 2024, that we support these initiatives, the president, even if they are not perfect. We cannot let the perfect get in the way of the good and making progress in this regard. It's essential that we elect, even within the Democratic community, and make sure that next year we are voting up and down the ballot for Green candidates and Democratic candidates.
I attended a session at the U.S. Center today, and they were talking about the high-end business, about government support for climate-based products for export. So our government is operating at both levels. It's operating at this high economy level and those in the more humble dimensions of our economy. I went to a press conference right after that by the Environmental and Energy Study Institute, EESI, and we'll have an interview from that encounter tomorrow. But this press conference by EESI focused on environmental justice. There was a mayor and a couple of other representatives from minority communities in the Mississippi Valley and Ohio, I believe. And they were talking about access to these programs, these benefits that come from the IRA. It's the agencies are seeking to reach all aspects of our economy, all aspects of our population, but these communities still have difficulty organizing within their neighborhoods to go after these funds, to approach the agencies and develop plans with the agencies, because the agencies are not really in a position to act on behalf of these communities when they find themselves in competition with the other elements of, say, a county or metropolitan area. So often these funds are subject to competition, and the environmental justice communities need to have their own organization and advocacy. So it was a very interesting press conference on that topic.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got to hear from Etienne, and look forward to maybe hearing him again on the program at sometime soon. Okay, I think now is a wonderful time to segue into our usual discussions with, or at least less discussions and more seeing what's on the ground with Michael Fidler. We do love the photos and we love the content to see what's actually going on the ground. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you for a little bit.
Well, thank you, Rock, for the floor. And I have a set of images for you. I prepared it today, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Let me share the screen. And here we go. This will be the first image of the day. Because every time I get to COP, I just simply walk to the plenaries to see what's going on there. And today, for some reason, it was quite empty. Oh, just let me show this one off. And not much was going on there. But a few minutes or 20 minutes later, there was an event organized by the indigenous people. And there was a lot of various nations, a lot of colorful faces, and of course, many photos taken there. It was kind of sad that the plenary was almost empty because at the end of that specific session, there was a lady from the nation or the indigenous people from northern Siberia, from Evenki. They are Evenki. They live in Yakutia. That's one of the coldest places in Earth. And I asked the lady after we had a very quick chat whether she came from Yakutsk, the very coldest town or city in the world. And she said, no, she was there maybe 10 days ago. I asked what was the weather there. She said it was -50. I count in degrees of centigrade, so -50. But then she said that she went to Moscow. It was okay. It was only -30. And then she flew from Moscow directly to Dubai, where it is about +30. It was a difference of more than 80 degrees for her, and it's not the coldest winter in Yakutia yet. It will get to -70 to -80 degrees of centigrade. Now, one of the topics today was transportation. And let me show you a few images which are not directly related to COP, but they talk about the transportation that we use here, so you get an idea how it is on the ground. Of course, when I think about Emirates, I think about the camels, because it's just a desert country, really a desert country. I have really seen more camels here in malls where kids ride them rather than in the desert so far, because we haven't left the town much. But if you want to ride a camel, you don't have to go to a desert, just go to a mall and you get a camel right there. Now, the mode of transportation we use here most often is metro. It's very modern, it's fully automated. It runs frequently every few minutes, and you get a chance to sit actually at the very front of the metro and basically view the road from the driver's seat, because there is no driver. It's fully automated. It's not that easy, because the first wagon of the metro and the last one is specific. It's either for women and children, so the area we cannot enter, and the other end is the golden class. That's for the rich people. Although I have not seen a single Emirati on the metro so far. Now, we don't ride the silver class, we don't ride the gold class. We take the metro in the usual class, the standard class. And we are quite lucky that the Expo is the very last stop, so we usually get a seat. But when we go a little bit further town, direction downtown, it can get really crowded. I don't mind riding a crowded metro, but sometimes it gets really tough. And I spend on this train maybe 45 minutes basically standing on one foot, just praying that the trip ends already. And when it gets a little emptier, people just sit down and relax, because it can get really pushy and really tough on the metro. There are also trams in Dubai. Dubai, you can take trams, but there are only 10 or 11 stops, so it's not really a mode of transportation we use very often. But this is just a regular metro stop, but it wouldn't be Dubai without even a metro stop looking just amazing. It has to be special. And there is also the monorail system. It's a unique feature that just runs between Dubai and the artificial island of Palm Jumeirah. Looks like this. It goes to the end of the artificial island to this super fancy hotel called Atlantis. We rode it once when we went to the event Dana organized 2 or 3 nights ago, and it was a unique experience. From the monorail, you don't really get regular seats. You basically get couches. It's not a couch, but it looks like a couch. So you just sit down and really you can relax there. Well, that's the vibe. And one more unique feature of this monorail, we were getting on the very last train at night, and I just noticed on the board that the train should go at 10 p.m., 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So I was wondering if it was on time, if the train that we took would be on time. And yes, it was exactly on time. It left at 2 p.m., 4 minutes and 32 seconds. So 2 minutes, 2 seconds, 2 seconds delay comparing to the schedule. So right on time. Yet another mode of transportation in Dubai are buses, and I have to say it's my least favorite mode of transportation here. It's not because that the buses are crowded. The buses are generally fine, but the traffic around the buses, it's horrible. And when you take it during a peak hour, you just suffer. I did not really fly to Dubai. I flew to Sharjah, a city maybe 20 kilometers north of Dubai. And I thought, hey, it's 20 kilometers, it will not take more than half an hour. And the bus ride took exactly 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was a terrible ride. And if I don't have to take a bus ride here, I never do. So I always try to get on metro as quickly as possible. And I really would not want to drive a car here in these conditions. The city is so crowded and so congested. Also, there is no shortage of wide lines. This is just a highway and not the main one. And you can see 2, 4, 6 lines one way. And at this hour, it was taken sometimes during around noon. It was not so crowded, but during the rush hour, it's really, really a pain. If I could choose, I would definitely want to travel on a yacht around Dubai, but that's not really probably an option for us. But since we stay close to the marina area, there are yachts everywhere. So I just like to pretend that one of them would be mine. So yachts and modes of transportation on water are everywhere, and it's Dubai. You can basically, if you want to travel on a unicorn, you can. It's Dubai. Now I also want to show the feature on the left, or I want to highlight it. It's called Ain Dubai. It's the tallest Ferris wheel in the world. It has it has something like 800 feet or 820 feet, so roughly it's 250 meters tall building. And the interesting fact about this is that it cost $1.6 billion. I just want to emphasize the number, $1.6 billion. It was built about or finished about 2.5 years ago. Then it operated for about 5 or 6 months, and then it got shut down. And nobody really knows why is that. I mean, the government knows and the engineers know, but now it's closed and the public doesn't know. I was curious to see if I could get there and maybe get a ride on it. No, it has been closed for about 1.5 years now, and on the website it says it's closed for maintenance. Really huge building, and some say that it has some difficulties with the foundation. Some say that the materials used were not really appropriate, or because it's the tallest building of its kind in the world, even a minor issue can turn into something major. It has not been tried before, but it is now what it is. So if you cannot get on a Ferris wheel, you can just rent a helicopter. No problem here. If you want to skydive, there is a small airport right on next to Palm Jumeirah, built specifically for skydiving, and there are these airplanes coming up and down every 15 minutes, and people are just skydiving all day long. You cannot fly drones in Dubai. That's surprising, but I took this image right at COP. There was a drone flying above us, and if something is dangerous, that's when it's flying a drone above people. So you cannot fly a drone on the beach, but flying at COP, obviously it was not a problem. And just a little side story when it comes to the transportation with airplanes. I did not fly directly to Dubai. I flew first to Qatar and spent maybe a week in Qatar, and then I flew with Air Arabia from Dubai to from Qatar to Sharjah to Emirates, and I took the low-cost airlines called Air Arabia. and I was not sure what to expect. And then I saw my fellow travelers on this flight. First, we had a prayer. That was not a good sign, but the flight was just fine. But there was a set of maybe 5 or 6 Falcons who flew with us. And I was just curious how the Falcons would fly. The gentleman who owned the Falcons, he just bought 3 seats. They put a plastic sheet on it and on 2 of the sheets, and then he placed his Falcons right there. So they flew with us, and Air Arabia became my favorite airlines right away. So I'm flying from Dubai or from Sharjah definitely with Air Arabia again, because it's a unique experience. And now going back to COP, at 6 p.m. there was this event called, let me just open dialogue between the presidency and observers. It was today just for observers, no press, no parties, just for observers. And when I arrived there, I saw the queue. It was 50 plus meters a queue. I decided not to go there because I didn't want to wait there. But somehow the queue got shorter, and I tried my luck. It was exactly for 200 people. And they counted the number of people they allowed in, and I was number 200. Exactly, I was the very last person they allowed in. So the president of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber, showed up. The event was scheduled between 6 and 7. It started at 6:20, so the president was 20 minutes late. He apologized, and he had his opening speech, and he talked for maybe 20 minutes about how this COP is going to deliver. And he brought up the topic of raising money or putting money together in some of the loss and damage fund all over and over. He mentioned it at least 4 times, saying how great it is to deliver these $700 million. And he went over and over about this topic. Then I had to leave to catch up with our session here. I was quite glad that I left because I could not listen to it anymore. Because when I took this image earlier today with the Ferris wheel costing $1.6 billion, then what was the COP president talking about all the money that was just raised and put together, then it sounded like what Greta would say, would be just this blah, blah, blah. And with that being said, I'm turning it back to you.
Michael, I think for those of us who aren't actually in Dubai, those are just simply wonderful just to get to know what's going on the ground, and maybe a future mystery book about what happened to the Dubai Ferris wheel.
I checked on that. There are a few articles, and it was fun reading them. I would recommend to do a quick Google search for that because you can read that the government simply decides to build something. It has to be the biggest or largest or tallest or widest in the world. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And then the project kind of disappears.
Just like the Dubai Ferris wheel when sea level rise eventually hits it. Thank you so much, Michael, as always. And I think we're getting close to the end of our segment today. So if anybody has any last or final thoughts they'd like to go over, now is the time. And yeah, I'll turn it over to whoever feels they have something to say. I see John's hand up, so we'll go to John.
Yeah, I was interested to see the images of the buses, the public transportation, and the challenges associated with that. I attended a session in the Philippines pavilion about electric vehicles for the Philippines. And they cited a very interesting fact that in the Philippines, public transportation accounts for 60% of all of their carbon emissions for transportation in that nation. Therefore, a government program on electric vehicles that focuses on public transportation can have a huge impact on the carbon emissions in that country.
That's interesting, John. I was attending a session today at the end with some world leaders, including a Chinese world leader. It was called Later is Too Late, Tipping Balances from Negative to Positive. And the Chinese representative was talking about positive tipping points in their country and how what used to be a very noisy city of Beijing, and I can actually attest to this. It has become so powered by electric vehicles rather than combustion vehicles. The streets are actually quite quiet now. Doesn't sound like a big, busy city anymore. It is a hopeful thing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Okay, any other thoughts here as we are coming close to the end of the segment here? Also, I don't forget I have been reading the chat. Stephen, yes, you're right. Folks like Bill Gates and John Kerry and Al Gore. I could count anybody with a private jet to be in that top 1%. And Judy, yes, your work is extraordinarily commendable. I mean, I'm not as engaged as I was before in the DECF, but I still understand the struggles it must be to go after those federal funds for the local communities. So, you know, kudos to you to keep on that hard work. And yes, Stephen, thanks you again, Michael, for the photos. You know, thank you for everyone who's typing in chat. And again, if you have any questions, please do feel free to throw them in there. We're happy to address them. Anyway, wrapping up our session today on day 6. We're so glad to have each and every one of you attending our sessions. Don't forget, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email them into us. We'll be sure to grab them and throw them in our segment tomorrow for day 7, which I believe is an off day, but we'll still have some good content for you as the drama at COP26 never ends. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else joining us today for our day 6, thank you so much for attending, and we will see you on the next one. Take care, everyone.